Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first in a series of Cal Matters town halls examining the radical change afoot at California's public systems of higher education. I'm Michael Zinstein, higher education reporter for Cal Matters. We're a nonprofit, nonpartisan newsroom committed to explaining California policy and politics. We've been covering how the COVID-19 pandemic and economic freefall has made it harder for colleges to deliver their promise of a world-class education to students. I also want to introduce the co-moderator for this town hall, Omar Rashad. Omar, briefly tell us about yourself.
Thanks, Michael. Hi, everyone. My name is Omar Rashad, and I am a Cal Matters intern and College Journalism Network fellow. The Cal Matters College Journalism Network partners with student journalists across the state to report on the major higher education issues that students are dealing with today. I'm looking forward to the discussion we'll be having today.
The COVID-19 pandemic has thrust students into an unprecedented landscape. Students are dealing with tremendous upheaval, from mastering new ways of taking classes to increased demands at home. Today's town hall seeks to add some clarity to the fall term and beyond. What will community college classes be like this coming term? Will students be able to get the mentoring, tutoring, and education they expect? How is the state's fiscal unrest affecting the community college system? Joining us for the town hall is California Community College's Chancellor Eloy Oakley, who oversees the system of 116 community colleges and its more than 2 million students. Before we begin, I want to thank the College Futures Foundation and Walter S. Johnson Foundation for sponsoring this town hall. Also, we have student journalists live tweeting this event. They're live tweeting this event, and they can be found at Roundup News. The students tweeting will be Shireen Kareem and Giselle Ormeno. Again, that's Roundup News, and that's with Pierce College. We will also have Molly Cochran of the Union at El Camino College. She'll be tweeting from ECC Union Molly. The hashtag is BackToSchoolCA. In this hour, I'll start it off by asking Chancellor Oakley a few questions, and then we'll transition to hearing directly from students, including 4 students with us today. The last quarter of this town hall will be reserved for questions from student viewers. So students, please start submitting your questions now, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. Welcome, Chancellor Oakley.
It's great to be here, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this with us. The first question, do you have a sense of how many of the 115 physical colleges are going to be fully online this fall?
So by and large, all of our colleges are primarily on some remote platform, including online, as well as other platforms that allow for remote instruction. The exceptions are primarily for programs like our career technical education programs that lead to employment in what we call essential infrastructure workforce. So those will be in person within a physical distancing environment. Otherwise, by and large, our students can expect, no matter where they are across the state, to be participating in some sort of remote instruction.
Okay, so even if the county indicates a loosening of restrictions, a community college in that county will still, by and large, practice virtual instruction?
Yes, by and large. I mean, certainly if a county begins to open up significantly, colleges will probably invite some students back on campus, but you know, the reality is there's so much uncertainty that it's very difficult to just open the doors. As we've seen across the country, colleges and universities that have tried to do this have quickly backpedaled. And so we don't want this to happen to our students. So unless there's some certainty in place, students can expect to be doing instruction remotely.
Okay, thank you for that. Enrollment question. What's enrollment looking like across the community college system? Are you expecting to see enrollment growth?
So I think this is one of those times where I can honestly say, I don't know. It is a very uncertain time for our students, for our communities, for our state. We are seeing some signs in some places across the state that enrollment is about average right now for this time of the year. But in other parts of the state, we're seeing some significant declines from last year. Now, many students are just waking up to the need to enroll in their classes right now as we speak. So we expect to see some of those numbers go up. But look, there is tremendous uncertainty. Many of our students have lost jobs, they have family members that have lost jobs. It's very difficult to really predict what's going to happen until we actually start to see students participating in class. And I hope that they all do, because, given where we're at in this environment, there is nothing better to have in your back pocket than your education.
Mm-hmm. And then next question, it's packed. You were spared state budget cuts. However, you're still looking at $1.5 billion roughly in deferrals for the school year. And a deferral is basically the state's way of saying it can't afford to give the system everything it's owed, but that money will be repaid next year, presumably. A silver lining is that if Congress approves a large enough stimulus package by October, the state will send back to the community college system about $800 million. So how many of your colleges can actually get by this year given those deferrals, and how likely are cuts to faculty and classes?
Right. I think that's an excellent, but it can be somewhat of a complicated and confusing answer because when you hear the term deferral, it sounds like we just were spared cuts. We don't have to worry about any of the budget reductions. The fact of the matter is that those deferrals mean that our colleges won't receive a large percentage of the revenue that they expect. So what does that mean? That means that a college still has to pay its employees, still has to support its students. So what happens is our colleges have to borrow the money from the markets. And so there's a cost to that, particularly for small rural colleges that are on a very tight budget. So you can still expect that there will be some cuts. Now, exactly where those cuts will happen depends on the fiscal stability of a college district. But all of our colleges are experiencing strain in their budgets. So we are asking everyone to call their member of Congress, to call our senators, to push that the next federal stimulus happens soon, and it includes funding based on headcount, not on full-time equivalent students, because our students, they're whole students, but some of them have to attend part-time. So it's very important that we get some of this relief so that a lot of the budget cuts that may have to happen because of this tight budget in the state can be set aside, and we can continue to serve students as we normally would want to do.
Mm-hmm. I just want to unpack a policy term that you just referenced to those who may not be as in the weeds. So typically when state or federal funding goes to schools, they use something called full-time equivalent. So if you have, let's say, 3 students each taking 4 units, they together would count as one student. They are a full-time equivalent. So for a college that has a large part-time student population, such as a community college, that full-time equivalent formula leads to fewer dollars per student, because the money isn't going to the college based on how many students they have, but based on basically how many are the equivalent of full-time. So that's a policy tip for y'all. But specifically how the deferrals affect students, what about cuts to faculty? What about classes? What kind of certainty can you give students about their schedules and whether the sections that they're used to, a class having 4 or 5 sections, what confidence can they have that those sections will be there?
So I can say with absolute confidence that our colleges are doing everything within their means to be able to offer a full plate of classes. There is nothing more that we want, that I want for our students, and for them to have the ability to complete their course of study as quickly as possible. Having said that, our students are going to find situations in some parts of the state where either because of declines in enrollment that were happening before the pandemic, or the impacts of COVID-19 on a community and are being felt in the community colleges, there may be a reduced amount of sections. If you think about it, many of our faculty are also struggling to manage their homes. Like many of our students, they have children whose lives have been disrupted. So there's a lot of disruption in the system right now. But I know in talking to our college leaders, both the faculty leadership as well as our administrators, they're doing everything possible to ensure that there's a full plate of classes. That has certainly been our message to our colleges, to do everything that they can. You know, the legislature and the governor fortunately provided in the last budget some support for our colleges in COVID-19 block grant that should help our colleges continue to meet the needs of students. So that is what we're expecting, but certainly there may be cases in some parts of the state where a small college or a college that already had some financial difficulties could experience a reduced amount of courses, but students should still expect that they can find the course that they need. The other thing I want to mention, Michael, real quick, because it's important, that we've also invested heavily in the California virtual college, the course exchange. So we have many more online courses that students can access right now if they can't find the class at their local college. So we've made that process much easier in order to ensure that students can get the courses that they need to finish the courses of study.
So, you know, a point of reference for many of us is 2008, 2009, 2010, the nadir of the last recession. Is this coming school year going to resemble the cuts to courses, the lack of resources that students experienced a decade ago?
The short answer is no. You know, I clearly remember living through those days at Long Beach City College, and it was very painful for our students and for everyone involved. I think the legislature, by making these deferrals, has the desire to keep colleges at a place where they can continue to offer courses. Does that mean that it won't be sometimes difficult to find a course? No, but there will be several options that students can exercise. And we're very hopeful that every student can find the course that they need in the variety of ways that we're trying to make them available, not just at the college, but through the course exchange as well. So I do not expect the same disaster we had in 2008 to replay this year.
Now, if you're looking at deferrals and it's unclear if you're getting more students this year, how will you manage to provide for tutoring, counseling, transfer support? That came up a lot when we were asking students what they're interested in. How will you ensure that those services are available to students, or can or should students reasonably expect slowdowns in accessing those supports?
So first, let me begin by saying that our students are the first, second, and last priority in everything that we're doing right now. Having said that, we are living in an unprecedented environment where you know, the health crisis is impacting our communities. It is impacting our faculty, our staff. The financial fallout is impacting our colleges, and the uncertainty is impacting them. So we can all expect that this will not be an easy time for any of us, including our students. I have great faith in their resiliency. But having said all that, it is our #1 priority to provide them the support and services that they need. Understanding that you know, our colleges had to pivot quickly Fortunately, over the last few months, we've made significant investments in professional development for our faculty to help them get up to speed on how to best engage with students online or remotely. We've invested in things like Cranium Cafe, which is available to all of our colleges, and students can be involved in conversations, chats with faculty, with advisors. We've invested quite a bit in technology over the last several months. So this fall semester, we are in a much better place than we were in the spring semester, where we had to literally turn on a dime. So I think our students should expect that those services would be offered. I do think that there'll be some initial growing pains the first few weeks of the semester, but they should expect the same services that they've always come to expect from our faculty and our staff. And I would encourage our student leaders to engage with the administration, to engage with the faculty, to make sure that they understand how things are working at their individual campuses.
Did you send a directive to the colleges to prioritize one layoff over another, one non-extension of an employee's contract over another, because the pie has shrunk for some colleges. So how can you ensure that the faculty will be there, that the student support services will be there? Are you telling the colleges to make cuts elsewhere?
So first, we have been working over the last couple of years to ensure that all of our colleges align with the goals of the Vision for Success the Board of Governors adopted several years back. To us, that is a clear North Star and puts a priority on students being able to complete their courses of study to improve outcomes for all students of all backgrounds and to close the equity gaps that have existed in our system. Mm-hmm. That has been the clear messaging to all of our colleges, that they will prioritize that in their planning, regardless of what happens around them. That is the priority. Each college district will work locally with its local elected officials, with its local leadership, to come up with ways to best align to those goals. So I or my office is not going to tell a college exactly how to do it, but we have made it very clear that the students will be the priority, and that they're not only that they complete, but that we do not use this crisis as an excuse to allow another generation of Black or brown students to fall further behind.
On that note, what are you telling the instructors or the faculty unions about Facetime with students? So this is inspired by a question from a student. They wanted to know, how are instructors being held accountable for answering students' questions outside of scheduled class time? Face-to-face time isn't available. What are you telling the faculty?
So first of all, I work directly with the leadership of the statewide academic senate. Statewide academic senate has done an amazing job of making sure that they coordinate with all the academic senates in the state, and that they are doing everything possible to support students in their learning. As you may know, we have made a number of changes in regulations to allow for students to continue their studies without being penalized by the health crisis or the economic fallout. We will continue to do that, and I know our faculty leadership will continue to do that. I know our labor leaders, our faculty labor leaders, have been working closely with administrators in their local colleges to adjust bargaining unit contracts to support the need for faculty to be available to students at hours that hadn't been quite used to. Mm-hmm. So all that is taking shape. Now, are there going to be examples of where that may not happen exactly or with the expectations that students should have? Yes, I'm sure that's going to happen. The best thing to do in those situations is to work with the student leadership on that campus, with the student trustee, with the student body president, and make sure that you're communicating those concerns to the leadership at the campus and to the board of trustees in the district. This is a very strange time. We're not in front of each other. We're not going into boardrooms and expressing our opinion the way we normally do. So we have to take a little bit more effort to make sure that we're getting that message across. And so I encourage students to do that. Your voice right now is critical because this is about your future. Yes, we as the educators are trying to adjust to meet you where you're at. But when we're not doing that, it's important for you to speak up and tell us what we're not doing. And so I think as long as we do that, you will see that 99% of the cases, our students will be responded to in the way that they should expect.
So if you're going to see a flurry of campus papers heeding that advice, you won't regret making that recommendation to the students?
Our student newspapers do that on a daily basis anyway, so I have no doubt that if there's an issue on campus, they're going to raise it in their journalism. I would expect nothing less of them.
Thank you so much, Chancellor, for taking those questions. We're now moving into the second phase of this town hall to hear questions directly from students. Leading it will be Omar Rashad, Cal Matters intern and College Journalism Network fellow. Omar, please take it away.
Hi, Chancellor. Thanks for being here. With me are 4 students representing distinct pockets of the state. First up, it's Tamana Nawabi, a second-year student at San Joaquin Delta College in Stockton. She is vice president of the student government there. Tamana, tell us a little bit about the issue that most concerns you, and also what you'd like to learn more about from Chancellor Oakley.
Hi, Chancellor Oakley. Thanks for being here. This past spring, some professors at my college assumed students were cheating when classes went online. So they made grading policies harder and coursework more rigorous. That made a lot of students stressed out. Coronavirus was a disruption, and to be faced with intensified coursework was nerve-wracking. In combination with all the stressors of the ongoing pandemic, many of us chose to drop classes to save our grades. If this happens again in the fall, it will only lead to more anxiety for students as it did for me in the spring. What will you do within your power as a chancellor to ensure that professors do not impose unreasonable expectations on students?
I think that's a wonderful question. I think it points to the challenges that we all face. I think students obviously are facing numerous challenges. Our faculty are trying to best understand how to deliver the quality education that they are used to providing in a very new environment. Having said that, that's no excuse to put the onus on the student. So this is a topic that is discussed often at the state level with the faculty leadership. As I mentioned before, I am very confident that the statewide academic senate continues to raise these issues with local senates. These are issues that are in the purview of your local academic senates. Grading policy, classroom instruction, these are what we call academic and professional matters. So it's very important that students have a voice on the local academic senates to raise these issues. It's like anything else. I mean, we have tens of thousands of faculty in the system. You could have 98% of the faculty pursuing grading in the way that they should, but how do we ensure that that other 2% are getting the message? And the best way to do that is to have a voice in your local faculty senate. So make sure that that's happening. What I am going to do, and what I will continue to do, is we will continue to look at Title V regulations and relax or waive regulations that help students continue to make progress and not be penalized because they've lost work, they've had to reduce hours, they have family members who are sick. We will continue to do that as long as this emergency persists. We will continue to find access to resources so that hopefully you don't have to drop those classes. So that's what we will continue to do. And I can assure you that I will continue to work with our faculty leadership to make sure that these issues that arise through student leaders, whichever campus you're on, get to the leadership of the faculty and as well as my office, and that they are communicated down to the local campuses, and that we ensure that the needs of students continue to be prioritized.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chancellor Oakley. And I guess a follow-up to that, what do you recommend students do if they feel like their voices are not heard? Let's say they are voicing their concerns about rigorous coursework, or just the simple fact that, coursework may be intensified for some reason. If they feel like they're not getting through locally, what do they do?
Right. So, I mean, certainly working with your campus leadership is the first step. If you feel that that's not, message is not getting through, certainly elevating it to the Board of Trustees. I know all of our locally elected boards, their primary responsibility is to ensure that students are being served. So every student trustee should be communicating this at local board meetings. Certainly, if you still feel that your voice is not being heard, then you can certainly access your statewide leadership. Your president of the SSCCC, our two amazing members, student members of the Board of Governors. Feel free to exercise all those avenues so that the message is getting across. That's happened several times in the last few months. I can tell you that every time those issues are raised at our level at the Chancellor's office, we immediately follow up with the local campus to find out what's happening and to make sure that they're aware. Now, it could be that that there is a legitimate reason why the faculty feel that they need to exercise a certain amount of authority. It is within their purview. But having said all that, we will do everything we can to ensure that the message is getting across if you don't feel it's getting across at the local level.
Thank you.
Totally. Thank you, Chancellor Oakley. Jumping south to Bakersfield, we're now going to hear from Gian Gaetao, a history major at Bakersfield College, who is the student government president there. He is also a legislative affairs director at the Student Senate for California Community Colleges. Go ahead and ask your question, Gian.
Thank you, Omar. Chancellor, the COVID-19 pandemic has detrimentally affected the health of many students and created new barriers for those already suffering from mental illnesses. I personally remember feeling helpless when my family had COVID. A lot of students can only control so much of their lives, and there's this looming uncertainty that everyone feels. I sometimes think about what if I lose someone close to me, and I'm sure others feel quite the same. Given these struggles, would you commit to creating a program at the state level that directly addresses students dealing with mental health issues and provide them with centralized support and resources, again, at the state level? Is this something you can commit to?
We not only commit to it, we will commit to continuing to advocate for student mental health services, as well as all our basic needs for our students in the state legislature. Understanding that the Chancellor's office is an agency of the state of California. So we don't generate our own revenue. We don't create our own budgets. Our budgets are that of the creation of the state legislature and the governor. So we have been advocating for more resources for mental health students even before the pandemic. I mean, we already had a crisis in food insecurity. We already had a crisis in housing insecurity. So the mental health issues have just gotten worse in this pandemic. So we are working to ensure that we create and support telehealth initiatives so that all of our colleges have access, all of our students have access to some sort of telehealth, including mental health services in that. The resources that I talked about earlier that the legislature set aside for the California community colleges, the block grant that was approved in the state budget, it's $120 million for COVID response. campuses can use those resources to increase mental health services. And so we're encouraging our colleges to do that. Having said all that, it's still not enough. It's still just a drop in the bucket. So you have my commitment that mental health services will continue to be a priority as we advocate for more resources, including at the federal level. In the next federal stimulus, we need to ensure that Congress supports states like California and provides resources for our students. Look, our students, you all are the most resilient individuals on the face of the planet. Having said that, the amount of pressure, the amount of strain, the amount of uncertainty that this administration in Washington, D.C. has placed on our students is some days unbearable. So we're going to continue to fight for more resources and more support for all of you. That is a clear commitment without question.
Thank you, Chancellor Oakley. Go ahead. Yeah. Thank you, Chancellor Oakley. And a quick follow-up to that, I'm curious about the methods by which, these services and resources are communicated. Can you sort of talk a little bit about, any guidances that you give local community colleges, on how to communicate this effectively? Sometimes community colleges mention, we email our students. Many students sometimes say, I check my email, maybe not every week. Things like that. So how do you think, community colleges can be communicating this information better? Yeah.
Well, communication is the key, particularly in crises like this. I mean, the example of the telemental health services that we're offering. We created a guide for colleges so that can be easily distributed. So we continue to use examples like that. I mean, first, every college is unique up and down the state. And we want to honor the fact that the whole purpose of having a community college is because no one knows the community better than the college in that community and can work with city services, county services, everyone involved to support students. We don't want to get in the way of that. But in situations like when there are state resources, we are developing guidance and guidelines that is distributed to all of our colleges to make it easier for them. So another good example is our sponsor, the College Futures Foundation. They were able to raise money to provide emergency grants to students up and down the state. So we work with College Futures at the Chancellor's office. We made it as easy as possible for our colleges to distribute that information. So we're going to continue to do that. And the final thing I'll say is at the beginning of the pandemic, at the height of the pandemic, we were having a webinar every Wednesday. Now we're having it every other week. And the whole purpose of that Wednesday webinar is to communicate issues like this, to highlight issues like this so that everyone is hearing the same message, and also so that some of the student stories can be clearly communicated so that everyone can hear the struggles that our students are facing and get responses from some of our colleges who are doing really innovative things to support their students in this time of crisis.
Totally. Students should definitely tune into those then.
Yes, we absolutely welcome students to participate.
Got it. Continuing the theme of going south, we'll hear from Cadence DeBias, a second-year political science major at Grossmont College near San Diego. Go ahead, Cadence.
Awesome. So as a disabled community college student, I have directly seen and experienced the effects of COVID-19 on the education system, from resource reallocation to professors not knowing how to support disabled students in an online setting. The reopening plan must continue to prioritize student needs as it concerns health, internet resources, and financial aid programs. What specific steps will you take to make sure community colleges are going to prioritize disabled and immunocompromised students who are going to need specific resources to continue online learning?
Sure. So first, let me begin by saying that our colleges, I know, take very seriously supporting the needs of all students, particularly students who come to our colleges with some type of disability. That has always been the case. That's always been a source of pride in the community colleges. And unfortunately, it's always been a sore spot because we've not always received the resources that our students deserve in order to serve our disabled student population. But this is sort of a unique environment where we have a number of students who are trying to access learning online or remotely. The challenges that they face are significant. Everything from closed captioning to ensuring that they have access to quality Wi-Fi. So again, the block grant that I mentioned a little earlier that the legislature approved can be used to help support accessibility for students, particularly disabled students. We are ensuring that colleges understand how to access resources for things like closed captioning to make sure everything that is put out there is accessible to disabled students. We're also continuing to press for more resources from the legislature. I mean, clearly, we are just scratching the surface of the need. Many of our colleges have used the resources they have, as well as gone out and worked with resources in their community to get access to portable MiFis, computer equipment that can be adapted for use of disabled students. So, I mean, fortunately, we have colleges that care deeply about serving all students. So it's not the issue that our colleges don't care. It is the issue that we have to find more resources and get them to them so that they can share them with their students. So that's something that we need to continue to do. I wish I could say that we were getting close to being able to serve all the needs, but we're not. That is an issue of advocacy that we have to keep working with our disabled student community to continue to press Congress, to continue to press our legislature. But we're going to continue to do that work and do everything we can to be as accessible as possible to every student. I mean, it is a source of pride that we serve the top 100% of students. And we want to be accessible to every one of those students.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chancellor Oakley. A quick follow-up to that too. You know, I think a running theme is, you know, the California community college system does not receive all the resources it needs to support its very large student body. Does it make it hard to make promises, you know, to students when that's the case, when you know, California community colleges are facing maybe a lack of resources?
So let me begin by answering that question by saying that the promise I can always make is that you will never find in any other system of higher education a more committed group of educators to all students than in the California community colleges. That's a promise I can keep every single day. The promise that we have a challenge with is the reality that the system of higher education that serves the most students, that is democratized higher education, that is accessible to the top 100%, receives the fewest resources of any system of higher education. That is a problem, and that's a problem that we've been pushing against, certainly ever since I was a student in the California community colleges. But it's become even increasingly important today when we have a country that is relying on essential workers. Those essential workers are in our colleges. They are the people out on the streets, making the deliveries, supporting customers in the grocery store, the first responders. Those are our students. So we need to continue to press for that. So yeah, it is very frustrating I mean, if you think about it, California community colleges serves 1/4 of all the community college students in the nation. That's a huge impact, but we continue to be shortchanged by the federal government when it comes to funding higher education. So that is a problem, but I commit to you that I'm going to fight that fight every day.
Thank you. Up last, we're moving north to Oakland. Feke Tutuila is a second-year student at Laney College. He's a student athlete and a member of his college's football team. He is also the secretary of the Wayfinder Club, which is dedicated to serving the Pacific Islander community on his campus. Feke, go ahead and ask your question.
Thanks, Omar. Hey, Chancellor Oakley. Students part of the Pacific Islander community, including some of my peers, face barriers when attempting to complete online coursework because they don't know English too well. It's hard to access class material and also sometimes communicate with professors when you don't know certain terms or mannerisms. What can you as a chancellor do to address the language accessibility for students who have a language barrier and find it difficult to access online coursework?
So thank you for that question. I think that is a key question, not just for the Pacific Islander community, but for all communities who come from countries beyond the United States of America. As you may know, I spent quite a bit of time in the Long Beach area where we have a large Pacific Islander community, a wonderful Pacific Islander community. To me, the most important thing that we need to do is to have more faculty of color in our classroom, more faculty from Pacific Islander backgrounds in our classroom. The more that we can diversify our faculty and our staff, including our administrators, the greater the likelihood that there are people on campus who understand the culture, the language, the traditions of individuals who come from other parts of the world. So that is part of our diversity, equity, and inclusion call to action. A call to action is clearly important given all of the social unrest right now. We really want to do the work necessary to begin to question the curriculum that we have, to begin to question the way that we think about education. Some people call it the decolonization of the curriculum. So that's just one example, but specifically to your question, we need to have culturally competent individuals on our campuses who have that sensitivity and who are asking the questions that you're asking before the student even has to ask that question. You know, is our content being received by our students in the way that they understand? You know, we need educators on our campus who are equipped to raise that question and who have the background to be able to answer that question and then begin to support the instructional design of our online content so that students such as those who you're talking about have access to it. In the meantime, given that we're not going to diversify our faculty and staff overnight, it's important for you, again, and I know I keep coming back to this, to raise your voice as a student in places like the Academic Senate, the Curriculum Committee, places where faculty are working hard to improve instruction and make sure that they're aware that students, whether they be Pacific Islander or not, are not understanding the content, or there are parts of that content that are not being absorbed in the way that it is intended to be. So that's important for you to raise that issue.
Thank you, Chancellor Oakley.
Thanks, Chancellor Oakley.
Hey, everyone. So we're going to take it to the next phase, questions from the audience. First, I want to thank Omar for leading an excellent session of questions. And student journalists, watch Omar. This is your model. No one paid me to say that, by the way. So as we wait for questions to come in, I want to get one out of the way. Chancellor Oakley, the U.S. Department of Education is appealing a court ruling that allowed California community colleges to distribute Emergency CARES Act aid to undocumented students. How will your system respond?
Well, first, our system will always respond by defending the rights of every single one of our students, regardless of what their background is. That is a fundamental line in the sand. And so in the case that you've described, we are working with the Attorney General's office. Attorney General Javier Becerra has been an incredible advocate for our students, continues to be an advocate for our students, and I have great faith in him and his team to continue to defend the rights of our colleges to distribute CARES Act funds to every student who has need. So we are responding. My understanding is that we responded today to that appeal, and I'm confident that we will continue to overcome the ridiculous arguments that the Department of Education makes.
Another question that we got from the Q&A, this one's from Erica Hughes. Growth of remote learning. How do you expect this to impact plans to innovate how we learn and the reach it may bring to a wider or more diverse group of learners? What can tech allow us to do differently?
So, Omar, we've talked about technology advancements in learning science for a long time. And we were working on a number of initiatives to advance those new technologies, things like the creation of Calbright College or the expansion of the online course exchange. We're all progressing and leaning on that new technology. And then this crisis hit. This crisis has given us a huge opportunity to significantly leap forward in our use of technology to help more students access the great instruction that our faculty provide. So we're investing heavily in professional development. There are a number of technology tools that we've introduced that we expect to keep going forward. This is not a one-time fix. You know, if there's anything I can say with certainty, is the reality that we knew going in before COVID is not the reality that we're going to see coming out of COVID. Life as we know it has changed, and we need to embrace that and use this as an opportunity. Does that mean that all tech is going to be helpful for our students? No. But we are going to continue to innovate. We're going to continue to find this opportunity as a way to carry forward that innovation, and we're not going to abandon the innovation once the virus is under control. So we've learned a lot in this crisis about what is working, what is not working. Clearly, the most important thing that we've learned, in my mind, is the lack of access to broadband in the state. And that's something that I know Governor Newsom is committed to changing. And I think stories that we're hearing from our students are important to that change, and we need to continue to hear them. But we can't move forward into a future if we're handicapping our students in communities up and down the state who don't have access to broadband.
Chancellor, this is a question from Genevieve Collar. Is there a chance financial aid and grants will be available to part-time students? Many can't afford all units, don't have time or capacity for full-time. I guess this is your opportunity to broadcast all the financial aid programs that are available to students.
So first of all, yes, I mean, the California Community Colleges, the state of California, is very generous in terms of the aid available to help pay for tuition. The California College Promise is available to all first-time, full-time students. In many communities, the College Promise is augmented by local contributions that make it available to all students. So please check with your local college to see if you qualify for the College Promise grant. Second, the California Student Aid Commission and the Cal Grant system do provide support for students. Again, as the student mentioned, part-time students have a challenge with aid coming from the Cal Grant system. That is something that we are working on through financial aid reform. But in the current crisis, we would ask you to work with your college. We were hoping for another round of federal stimulus and hopeful that in that round there'll be additional emergency aid for students. Many communities are raising money locally for emergency aid. So again, check with your local college to find out what resources have been made available. The College Futures Foundation, our sponsor here, continues to raise money and will hopefully make another round available of emergency grants. The Foundation for California Community Colleges is raising money right now to make grants available to healthcare students. because we know how critical they are. So there is a lot of philanthropy happening, as well as state aid. Even if you're undocumented, there is aid for students. So work with your local college, find out what all those resources are available, and apply for any and all aid that's out there. There are a lot of good people trying to help students like the ones listening in across the state. We just need to make sure we connect the two.
And Chancellor, the community college system has a one-stop shop website that links to all of these state and local efforts. Can you give us that website?
Yes, it's ICanAffordCollege.com. That's easy. It's in various languages. So it's a great place to stop and look with a variety of resources, as well as the California Student Aid Commission. If you just Google the California Student Aid Commission, they have a lot of wonderful resources as well for California students.
Okay, name that website one more time.
ICanAffordCollege.com is the website sponsored by the California Community College Chancellor's Office.
Great. One more question we have. Question from Carly, watching us on YouTube. What options do low-income students have regarding internet access? Any ways you are helping them? I think this is a great opportunity to talk about how, obviously local community colleges are providing some sort of resources. Can you please talk more about that?
Yes, what continues to make me proud every single day of serving the California community colleges is how much our colleges do, including our student governments, student clubs. I know firsthand that every college up and down the state has been providing resources to our most under-resourced students. So things like providing them Chromebooks or other computer equipment, access to portable MiFi so that they can have access to the internet. Some colleges have rented vans that have access to Wi-Fi, put them in the parking lots so that students can come in and access Wi-Fi. They've partnered with local community organizations to make facilities available to students who need access to Wi-Fi. We've also worked with most of the major broadband providers like AT&T and Comcast. Many of them created programs to support students who did not have access to Wi-Fi. So all those things continue to happen. And again, the block grant that was provided by the legislature allows colleges to use that money to help students gain access to Wi-Fi. It's unfortunate that we have to jump through all these hoops, but until we can make universal broadband a reality, I know our colleges will do everything that they can to provide that resource to all of our students.
Chancellor, we have a few more questions coming in. Could we have you join us for 5 more minutes?
I'm happy to join you for 5 more minutes, Michael.
Thank you so much.
Only because Omar is here.
Yes. Omar is the star here. This is a question from Soham Ketan. How will students feel part of the college community? Are there any special tools being leveraged to help them?
Yes, there is no one better to help our faculty and staff understand how to create virtual communities than our students. So I know many student government organizations have been directly involved. I know working with the SSCCC, they've done some amazing work at creating virtual communities, virtual networks of students, getting information to students. And look, our colleges are going to do that. They're going to engage, create virtual communities, try to get information out on all the channels possible, engage in social media, try to continue to create communities. But what I have found time and time again is that students do that much better than faculty or administrators. So, I look forward to continuing to learn from and work with our students, empower them to create networks on campus. Peer-to-peer networks are the best. I mean, there's nothing better for a student who is challenged or who is feeling lonely or is feeling that there's no support available than to hear from another student, another peer. So we're going to continue to encourage that, but we're also going to invest ourselves and help our colleges create those communities through access to technology that's available to all of our colleges in the system.
How should students gather in this digital realm to create these peer-to-peer networks? What specific tool are they? Is this something that they can do on Canvas, or are you encouraging them to create some sort of Google group independent of the college?
So again, what I have found is we can tell students what tools are available, whether they be Google Groups, Microsoft Teams available, any of a number of different social media tools that allow for these communities to be stood up. But what I've always found is that our students do this even better than us. So I'm not going to discourage that. I will always encourage that. But whether it be creating Slack channels or whatever the latest is these days, we want students to remain connected. There is nothing more important than for a student to feel connected to the college community. That was difficult before the pandemic. We have a lot of students, part-time students, who are driving in, going to work, taking care of their family. Building community is the most important thing for students to be able to persist and finish. So anything we can do to encourage that, we will do, and I will continue to push our Chief Information Officer at the Chancellor's office to support any efforts possible or any of the new technologies that are available, making sure our colleges have access to that.
Speaking of new technologies, I was wondering, when community college students, meet with our peers or talk to our peers at universities, we notice they have premium Zoom accounts. And premium Zoom accounts allows you to, meet with 3 or more people for more than 40 minutes. I know that's not the case at a lot of community colleges. Do you think, that is something potentially on the table to, offer community college students premium Zoom accounts?
Well, I think it's on the table now, Omar. I wasn't aware that that some of our colleagues at the other public universities had access to this. I can certainly find out if it is available through our colleges. I mean, certainly tools like Canvas, we make available to all of our students because almost every college is on Canvas. Almost every college is using Zoom. With the amount of colleges that we have a lot of purchasing power in the system. So I think it's just a matter of us making sure that we understand that this is a tool that is useful to our students and leveraging our purchasing power, which may be happening, but I will definitely check in with our team to find out if that's happening no more.
For sure.
Okay, do we have any other questions? Well, I mean, this is like a coda to what I asked earlier, but it came from the public, so we're going to ask it again. How are you reducing your costs? Wants to know Tony Sarika.
Are we reducing our costs? Well, first of all, nobody's traveling. So that's a significant cost savings, which is good for our campuses right now because it allows them to redirect those dollars to trying to support students in this, incredibly difficult environment. But let me first say that our colleges are always trying to reduce the cost of education, but we are also the least funded system of higher education. So there's only so much cost cutting we can do that won't impact students. So, we're always trying to be very careful of when we talk about cost cutting that we're not cutting into support for students because, our colleges, this is something good for our students to know. And I know many of our student journalists know this, who cover board meetings. Nearly 88% of a college's budget is salary and benefits of the faculty and the staff. So, the costs that you see at a college are the costs that are there talking to you in classrooms, meeting you in the parking lot, or enrolling you in classes. So it's very difficult to cut around the edges. We do, and in cases like travel, that's certainly been the case. A number of other areas that the pandemic has made it easier to save money, but that money is immediately put back into supporting students because there is such a huge need So that's something we always have to remember. Our students deserve more resources, and we need to keep pushing for that.
Speaking of the students, I'd like to thank all the students for being on today's town hall. That's Cadence Debayas, that's Feke Tutuila, Gian Gayatao, and Tamana Nawabi.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Chancellor Oakley. Thank you, all the participants in the public Q&As for submitting your questions. We are now out of time. Again, on behalf of Cal Matters, I want to thank Chancellor Oakley for taking the questions and remaining on the hot seat for more than an hour. I also want to thank again the College Futures Foundation and Walter S. Johnson Foundation for sponsoring this town hall. I want to thank the student reporters who are live tweeting this event. For tomorrow, I hope you can tune in for a conversation with California State University Chancellor Tim White. He'll be taking questions from students during a similar town hall, and that starts at 12 p.m. Again, that's tomorrow. If you missed a part of this town hall, watch it on demand on our YouTube channel, where you can find all of our virus coverage. Have a good afternoon, and please stay safe and healthy.
Is anyone still on here? Are we all heading out?